Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla, let's go over the market, and let's, well, figure out what in the hell is happening with Tesla and what we can, of course, expect moving forward, because as I'm sure you can all guess, tomorrow's a pretty big day with CPI coming out, which is probably the biggest catalyst from now until earnings, which is about like a week and a half or so, almost 2 weeks actually, after, well, from today really, but after tomorrow. So, sorry, I got eyelash in my eye, but nonetheless, let's just jump right into it. Tesla closing the day, unfortunately, once again, I mean, to no surprise, down on the day, about 0.4%, which is putting us at just shy of $244 per share, which of course, compared to the market, as expected, an underperformance, right? What else is new with Tesla, of course? Now, obviously, so let's just look at the overall picture before we dive into like more, detailed information on technical analysis. Like, let's just take a look at the overall picture, right? Tesla has been selling off somewhat aggressively, especially if you look at it relative to the market. The market's been doing overall pretty well. Tesla followed the market on this sell-off, and the market has been doing pretty well ever since, right? Almost pretty much got back most of those gains on the sell-off. Tesla obviously, well, decided to pretty much do the opposite, sold off with the market, and then pretty much continued to just slowly bleed out, right? And so far, Tesla has been down significantly, right? Not significantly, but from the highest point to the lowest point, which was today, we sold off almost 13%, right? And how many bars was this? Let me take a look one more time. And 8 bars, right? So about 1 week and 6 days of trading, or just overall rather. So the thing with this is the fact that, whenever a stock is just selling off constantly and just feels like there's no way it's going to, rise back up, that's usually when it does, right? So when you have sell-offs like these where it just keeps going and it feels like there's no stopping it, right? Just continue going. Usually when it does finally turn, it will turn usually with some aggression, at least in theory. Obviously with Tesla, especially the way it is right now, who knows? But that's just kind of the overall picture, right? And on top of this, you'll notice that I have these 2 green lines, and what are they? Well, it's a beautiful looking descending wedge, right? So we had these ascending wedge, remember that we talked about many times, right? These 2 blue lines, ascending wedge, we were bouncing in between, and it was how I always said, it's bullish within it, but more often than not always, but more often than not, it does break down, well, to the downside. And that's exactly what happened. Well, obviously, what we are in as of right now is pretty much the opposite situation. This was an ascending wedge that breaks to the downside, and I'm sure you can guess what happens with the descending wedge. It breaks to the upside. Again, just like with the ascending wedge, nothing is guaranteed. It doesn't mean it has to. But if you're looking at this strictly from a statistical or like a probability type perspective, which is usually what you should be doing when you're, looking at trades and entering trades and, all that kind of stuff, the probability is in your favor of it breaking to the upside, right? Take a look at it on the 4-hour chart, same idea. You can see we're pretty much at the apex of it right now. We can technically still go down to one more time to like the 230s, maybe a sell-off on CPI and then a massive rally post. Could happen, who knows? But that's kind of the situation we find ourselves in. Obviously, again, with something like CPI tomorrow, it's a pretty, pretty wild card event, if you will, right? Where who knows how the market's going to react? Who knows what the CPI is going to be, right? There's a lot of unknown factors there that unless you have some kind of insider information, which you do, please DM me. Absolutely no one knows what is going to happen, what the numbers will be, how the market will react to those numbers, etc. So all we can do is take our best guess. And like I said, strictly looking off of just technical analysis, we have this descending wedge pretty much at the apex. We still can, like I said, potentially tomorrow, go lower one more time, pretty much the same level we want to today and still be within it, right? But not lower than 230. But again, it looks like a decision should be made tomorrow at this point. I'll be surprised if it isn't. So that's number one. We find ourselves in such a descending wedge. Now, the next thing I like to look at, also one of my personal favorite reversal, indicators, whether it's a bullish or bearish reversal. In this case, it'll be a bullish reversal, or like a reversal from a bearish into a bullish scenario, I guess, is this daily candle, right? So this daily candle, can I remove drawing circuit? Is there a way to like hide the drawing template? I don't know. I'm sure there's a button somewhere. I just don't know where it is. But regardless, actually it's right here. I think. Okay, well, it's not that at all. It's whatever. You know what? The point is, I'm sure you can take a guess, right? I just hope this green line isn't in the way. But this hammer candle right here, I'll just move it. The daily candle is a hammer candle, right? This is a beautiful looking hammer candle. The only, I guess, downside of this hammer candle is the fact that it's a red hammer candle, right? Obviously, a green hammer candle in a situation like this would have been more bullish, but this is still pretty good. I mean, at this point, beggars can't be choosers. I'll take what we can get. But regardless, it's a beautiful looking hammer candle, right? You have the thickness of the candle being much smaller than the wick down below. Again, usually you want the wick down below to be about double the size of the actual thickness of the candle. In this case, we're probably triple even, arguably, right? At least 2.5 to triple the size, which is great. So that's a nice sign. That's pretty much what you want to see. A long wick, short candle itself. And you want to see, ideally, as short of a wick at the top as possible. And this is a pretty good one, right? Pretty short wick at the top as well. So all in all, it's a pretty nice looking hammer candle. Again, the only thing that sucks about this is the fact that it is a red hammer candle. So it's not as super duper convincing, I guess, as a green one would have been. That would have been very, good, because that also would have implied that we ended up closing higher than yesterday's close, which is, or yeah, we would have closed today higher than yesterday's close, which would have been even more bullish. Obviously, we didn't do that, so that's still one factor we have to take into consideration, that, well, yeah, we couldn't close above yesterday's high or close. So that's a little bit, not amazing, but overall, I still like the picture, and I like the way this looks, and the fact that it's happening at a very important area, like I've said many times before, which is this pretty much 230 area, right? This 230 area is crucial for many reasons. Let me just put this back really quickly. It looks something like this. For many reasons. Number one, as you can see, the rectangle kind of green box that I have over here, right? Many times it acted as a resistance here and then acted as a support here. So this general area right here between pretty much like 232, let's just say, all the way down to even as low as 226 technically, even though I'd prefer not to see it. That's where things kind of get a little dicey. Is an area of support. At least it should be, right? Again, I personally wouldn't want to risk going that low, like we did once or twice actually on these two candles right here, and then follow up with a beautiful reversal. That's where things get really scary. There's a possibility we test it tomorrow. Obviously, just keep that in mind. I prefer not to, but as long as we're pretty much holding this general area, and ideally, which is why I don't want to go below that, the 200-day moving average, which is pretty much sitting at almost exactly where we bounced off today. We got extremely close to it. It's sitting at pretty much 231, and our low today was 231.3 roughly, right? That area is really important. So when you get a hammer candle at an area that makes sense to reverse at, such as an area like this, massive support and or supply demand, and on top of that you have something major like a 200-day moving average as well, it's a pretty good spot to reverse that, right? If there is going to be a reversal. So assuming this plays out the way it looks, because again, it looks like it's ready to reverse, we still have, of course, remember that TW pivot I talked about the other day? Well, if I zoom out, you can see it's entering levels that we haven't seen in quite some time. Usually when we enter these, oversold levels, pretty rare that we get to a bar that's the dark blue or like teal or whatever color you want to call this bar, right? We got to the bar that we were at yesterday was the bar that we were at here before we reversed here, right? But it's pretty rare that we end up, if I zoom in, get to this kind of darker bar over here, right? And that's exactly what we ended up printing today. So it's telling me that, this indicator is like flashing signals, the fact that, like, again, doesn't have to be literally right here, right now, but, we're in theory pretty darn close to what could be a bottom and a, reversal setting up essentially. So I don't know. I like this indicator personally. It's in my opinion, from what I've seen, it's decently accurate. Now, obviously, not every indicator is going to be perfect at every time, but from what I've seen historically, pretty nice, win rate, if you will. So I like that. And it's happening at a pretty pivotal area, which is great to see. And of course, it's at a pretty oversold territory, or like, this might be a bottom kind of signal area when, we don't see this one very often, right? When it gets this far or this low. So good stuff. I like to see that. That is kind of what I do want to be looking at in this specific scenario. So the question, of course, also comes down to, well, okay, let's just say it does play out. Let's say we do break out. And let's say it does play out the bullish scenario and we do reverse from here. We break out of this descending wedge. Cool. What's next? Where do we go? First and foremost, obviously, we'll maybe find a little bit of resistance around 236, 237, right? Potential small resistances, because you can see we did, let's say, the 4-hour chart. Let me go ahead and remove this so we can see the chart a little bit better. Let me go ahead and open this up. Pretty much this area right here that these candles all kind of bounced off of, right? This general area might act as a bit of a, resistance, right? Always a very, possibility, but ultimately I think this should take us at least to the 240s, like low to potentially mid-ish 240s. That's the main spot I'll be personally looking at for this descending wedge to break out and give it to us, right? So for instance, one thing you can do also is take a Fibonacci. It's that simple sometimes. Take the Fibonacci, go from the top here, and again, assuming this is the low, assuming we hit the low today on the 4-hour chart, let's say, right? Assuming this is the low and we're not going to go any lower. Just a rough example, of course. 0.382 level is 244, 0.5 is 248, 0.618 is 252. Those are the three main levels I'll be personally looking at. And I'd be pretty surprised if we don't get to. I really would be surprised if we don't get to pretty much around the 0.5-ish level, which is, again, mid to high-ish 240s. That's the main level I'll be targeting, but I'm not going to get, too greedy with it either. So keep that in mind. But ultimately, I'd want to come back up pretty much somewhere around the mid 240s, give or take, right? Now, again, we talked about this before. We'll talk about it one more time. We're potentially setting up, an inverted head and shoulders pattern. So we have the left shoulder here. We have the head right here that we've been forming, right? Usually you want the head to be a little bit smaller than the shoulders, and then you have the right shoulder potentially being formed as well. So maybe we come up to 240, get a rejection, come back down to like 236, 237. So for instance, let me just draw it out, potentially like this, come back down, and then we move up even higher, right? This could also happen, and this also will start to execute this inverted head and shoulders pattern, and this can take us as high as even 250 if this head and shoulders pattern actually does form and then execute. That is a possibility, right? But that's kind of the way I'd be expecting it. Again, as we also mentioned the other day, If this does happen, this also brings us into a potential, range of now having this bearish head and shoulders being set up. We have the left shoulder here on the left, we have the head up here, and then potentially, if we do rally back up, which I think we will, to about the mid-ish again, give or take, 240s, that'll be the right shoulder setting up. So keep that in mind, something to understand and pay attention to. But that's kind of the main thing I'm looking at. Again, tomorrow's a big day, CPI coming out. Who knows what'll happen? It is a wild card-y sort of day. We'll see. But all in all, it's looking good. It's looking ready. 65-minute chart still has that bullish divergence, right? It's looking a little bit less amazing, but it's still absolutely there as essentially we're making, actually, no, it still looks great. Right, I lied. As we're essentially making lower lows every single time. What's happening here? We're making higher lows every single time. Beautiful bullish divergence. There's a lot of signals telling me we should rally. Obviously, doesn't mean we have to. Nothing is guaranteed, and this can all just go outside the window. Pretty much with CPI just completely destroying the market. It's always a possibility. But again, strictly through TA, it's looking like it's ready to reverse. And I think tomorrow CPI, hopefully fingers crossed, will be it. And if not, and if we sell off, then the only hope there will be the fact that it's essentially what happened, like for instance, on this candle right here, where we massively sold off and then just had a massive bounce and then reversed following that as well. Kind of like what we had over here, massive sell-off, ended up buying back most of it, and then we reversed the following days as well. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, and that's kind of what I'll be paying attention to. So yeah, we'll see how it shapes up. We'll see how it forms. We're still technically retesting the bull flag. We haven't really closed candles within it. Yeah, tomorrow's important. Tomorrow's a big day. We'll see how it plays out, and I think that'll be probably the biggest catalyst up until earnings in about 2 weeks from now. So with all that being said, thanks for watching, and as usual, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.